Welcome to the Critically Clueless. Today we're doing a video on Disciples Liberation. Now this is all about Aviana and her class collection. Now once you get a good few hours into the game, you will reach a point where you get to pick your class. Now in Disciples Liberation, you actually get to respec whenever you want. It only costs 1,000 gold, so you can try out and experiment with every single class. But you may be asking yourself, what class should I pick? And, what's kind of the benefits to each class? So that's what this video here today is about. I'm going to go over the 4 different types of the first classes that you get to choose from, and what I think the best thing about each of them is. And don't forget guys, if you find this video useful or entertaining, or just want to see more videos on Disciples Liberation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, that way you don't miss out on every video that I'm going to be posting. So the first class we need to talk about is Warlord, which is your basic sword specialist warrior character. It's probably the easiest one to use because it is the most basic of them all. So as with every single class that you get 2 active abilities. These are abilities that you get to trigger in battle, and then you get a passive ability as well. So first up, we have Piercing Strike. So this ability deals physical damage, it negates 50% of physical resistance, and it inflicts curse, which means they're not very good at receiving heals. Next up, we have Purification, which deals divine damage 2 squares around Aviana. It also inflicts taunt to any enemies in that area, meaning that they will only attack her, and it grants any ally Inspired, which is a +2 to morale. And the passive ability is Divine Strength. It grants physical protection and physical might to allies within 2 tiles of Aviana. Now, having picked that class, you get special access to a couple of extra perks in the skill tree. Now, once you dump 10 points into the combats column, you will unlock Wanted, which is a passive ability. And whenever Aviana lands a critical hit, that target becomes marked for 2 rounds. And a marked target gets 10% more damage from all sources. But the first real good ability I would put points into is Vampiric Might, which basically gives you 5% of all damage that you deal back as HP, and you also inflict bleeding upon the opponent. You can put up to 5 points in this, and it will go up 5% each time you do so. And then you can also unlock Flaming Burst Weapon, which basically inflicts burning to an enemy for 3 rounds as well. Next up, we have Hexblade, which is basically a magic melee hybrid. The first ability you gain is Venom Blade, which inflicts poison upon the target and does physical damage. The second ability that you get is Burning Verdict, which inflicts divine damage on the opponents that you attack. It paralyzes them and puts burning effect. I love the amount of status effects that Hexblade actually seems to offer. And the passive ability actually improves the critical and the evasion to any allies within 2 tiles to Aviana. And as we all know with games like this, anything that improves your critical chances is always a must. Now when it comes to the skill tree, you're going to be wanting to do a little bit of everything. Don't forget, this is a melee and magic hybrid. But in the combat tree, what you do actually get access to is Hit and Run, which is if Aviana attacks before moving, she gains a +3 to her next movement. And then she also gets Poison Blade, so she masters poison and it inflicts the poison for 3 rounds. What she loses from having a Warlord is Cover, which is actually a good ability. And then of course she doesn't get access to the Flaming Burst Weapon as well, but you can still get Vampiric Might. Next up we have the Seeress build, which is a pure magic build. Now first up we have Polar Ray, which has a chain effect, and it will hit up to 5 enemies that are standing next to each other on the battlefield, and it will do primal damage and inflict shield on targets. Next up, we have Radiance, which will deal divine damage to enemies or heal allies up to 2 squares around Aviana. It does have a cooldown of 4, but this basically turns Aviana into a healer character and can be really good if you pop her in the middle of the battlefield. And lastly, we have Holy Resilience, which grants regen to allies within 2 tiles of Aviana. This is a great pick if you want a character that's going to be able to bring a lot of heals to your game. Now, whether you are building a Seers or a Witch class build, the Magic tree line has a number of decent perks that you're going to want to put points into just to get access to the better spells later in the game. But the one perk that I like having the ability to use the most, you simply don't get using the Warlord or the Hexblade, is teleport. Teleport is very, very powerful and basically allows you to teleport across the battlefield, meaning you don't have to necessarily walk through corrupted hexagon tiles. And it also means you don't have to go around certain obstacles across the battlefield as well. I personally find this really, really useful with it in my gameplay. Teleport is just a very, very good perk to have. However, it should be noticed that choosing this class will mean that you'll no longer have access to your swords, or any sword for that matter. And lastly, we have the Witch build, which is another mage class build, meaning we don't have access to a sword, much like the Seer class. And unlike the Seer class, which is dealing divine magic, you will be dealing unholy damage with the first ability that you get. So the Witch class is going to work very well for your bad playthroughs. If you're going to be a bit naughty and make some choices that other people may frown upon, this is the class, if you're going to use the magic, that's going to help you out the most. With the first ability, you also inflict bleeding status effect and afraid on the target. The next ability you've got is Heaven's Light, which does do divine damage, and it also inflicts weaken to the targets, and it's an area effect ability. And lastly, your passive effect is Inspiring Power, and you will grant Divine Might and Unholy Might to allies within 2 tiles of your character. So on to the skill tree, and in Magic, as well as gaining access to Teleport, we also get Arcane Critical. So when Aviana casts a primal or unholy offensive spell, and remember she actually has them as abilities as well, she gains an improved critical strike for 3 rounds, and crit attacks do really, really well in this game. But that is the 4 classes, early classes in the game. Much with the rest of this game, it's all about choice, and it's your choice which class you pick. But whichever class you do pick, let me know down in the comments your favorite class, what class maybe you don't like, and what class you want to use the most. My favorite class is the Witch class. It's the one that I completed my first playthrough in a game. I had a lot of fun doing it. But I think on my second playthrough I'm going to go for the Seers class, just because I like having extra healers in the game. But don't forget, guys, if you've learned anything or just found this entertaining or want to see more Disciples Liberation content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and that way you don't miss out on more videos. But until next time, guys, happy gaming.